Subject, ship Hedulina. Species, Urari. Ship, RSV Lalana. Location, unknown. There was a clunk and a slight hiss as the docking bay airlock performed its task of connecting the Thanatos with the alien craft. Captain Reynolds and I glanced at each other. He looked stoic and confident, and I wondered if I looked as nervous as I was. This is it, my first official duty as a Republic diplomat. My heart's thumped in my ears. It's almost as nerve-wracking as combat. Almost. Interior atmosphere of the alien vessel is of similar composition to our own, Tim said. One of these days we're going to run into aliens that can't breathe oxygen. Will it be you or them who has to wear the suit? I asked. Depends on where the meeting is held, Reynolds answered. The door opened, and 4 aliens stepped through. There was a moment of stunned silence at their appearance, mostly due to the fact that they all looked different from each other, not so much in the way that an Urari looks different than its sibling, but more in the way that a human looks different from an Urari. 4 different species of diplomat had just stepped aboard the Thanatos. Greetings, Reynolds said, recovering quickly. I am Captain Reynolds, diplomat of the United Systems and commander of the USS Thanatos. This is ship Hedulina, diplomat of the Republic. Welcome aboard. Thank you, the alien that most closely resembled high fighter gun said. I am Eni Silroth V, diplomat of the Inara. You may refer to me as Eni. I was careful to keep my facial expression neutral as my mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene before me. 4 sapient alien species in one system. Did they all come from the same cradle world, or are they also a galactic alliance? If that's the case, how many systems do they control? As these thoughts ran through my mind, Eni proceeded to introduce the other 3, Grint SM, a short and stocky alien with 4 eyes from a species called Marl, Lorix Longjaw, a slender alien with 6 arms and 3 fingers on each hand from a species called Pexa, and finally, Toryugan, a sturdy-looking alien with clawed fingers and natural plates covering its skin from a species called Zandi. Together we form the Till Collective, Eni finished. I see. Well, please follow us to a meeting room where we can talk more, Reynolds said. He led us to a conference room with plenty of chairs and a large ovular table in the center. I sat opposite to Reynolds at one of the sharper curves of the table, and the alien ambassadors filled in around us, 2 to my left and 2 to my right. I was a tad offended when they all turned to Reynolds, but then I realized it was simply because I hadn't spoken yet, and they took that to mean Reynolds was leading this meeting, which, to be fair, he is. Let's get started, shall we? Reynolds asked with a smile. This meeting is to formalize a defense pact between the United Systems and the Till Collective. And what are your terms? Grint asked. Simply that you allow us in your system to fight the Omni Union and join us on the offensive when the time comes, Reynolds replied, maintaining his smile. Which shouldn't be too long now, as a matter of fact. That's quite a generous deal, Lorix said. Too generous. You offer us salvation and an end to a war that has no end in sight for free. You're either attempting to deceive us, or you're woefully naive. Neither is the case, I assure you, I interjected, remembering everything I'd learned about the United Systems all at once. The alien ambassadors all turned to look at me, likely due to the shakiness in my tone rather than this being the first time I spoke. He's right, Reynolds said. We are neither deceptive nor naive. I believe the reason you came to that conclusion is because you misunderstood our terms. Once we begin our offensive and the Omni Union stops invading your system to try to fight us off, it would be all too easy to consolidate your forces and start rebuilding. That's what any reasonable government would do. However, the price of our aid is to send those forces forth to take the fight to the OU. Reynolds' speech gave the ambassadors pause. They looked at each other and contemplated for a few moments. I apologize for my accusation, Lorix broke the silence. Now that the terms have been clarified, though, I do have further cause for hesitation. You offer aid, but in what form? This ship, Reynolds grinned. Omega 8th Fleet has been mustered and will be inbound once the pact is signed. Omega suddenly materialized in the center of the table. They are currently at full strength. All 4 diplomats tensed, and despite myself, I joined them. Both Omega's sudden appearance and the reaction of the diplomats had somewhat startled me. I quickly recovered, and Omega looked directly at me with its head slightly tilted, mocking me, no doubt, acting confused as to why I would be surprised at its sudden appearance. Disregarding the fact that it had intentionally tried to be a source of fear when I had first encountered Omega, the meaning behind its avatar had been lost upon me. But now I knew what it meant, and I now know that Omega loves to scare people. I narrowed my eyes at the skeletal hologram. Holographic communications, interesting. Not very power efficient, though. Tor ran a claw across his chin. Omega, you appear to have a similar structure to my people. If you don't mind my asking, what species are you? I am a human-created artificial intelligence in service to the United Systems, Omega said. My avatar is the skeletal remains of a human being wearing a robe and holding an ancient farming implement, the Grim Reaper, a mythical representation of the concept of death created by early humans. Again, the 4 ambassadors were stunned. An actual machine intelligence? Eni asked. Yes, Omega responded. Tor held up a hand to silence everyone else. You choose to represent the death of your creators. Why? You are incorrect in your interpretation. My choice of avatar is in deference to my creation, which I'm afraid is a sensitive subject. Classified? Tor asked as the other ambassadors looked at each other. Something about their gaze reminded me of the way my sister and I communicate non-verbally, but not quite, less expressive. No, it is simply not something I wish to discuss when more important matters are at hand. Perhaps some other time, Omega answered with a flourish before turning to Eni. Ambassador, I feel obligated to inform you that your neural communicators are not secure while aboard this ship. What? What do you mean? Eni stammered. The devices are using our communication networks to send your messages to each other more rapidly, and our systems are automatically decrypting them as a result. A remarkable piece of technology, but I can't help but overhear you. Well then I owe you an apology, don't I? Lorik laughed. Not at all. Your assessment of my capabilities is correct, and while your assessment of my intentions is incorrect, I'm sure you have your reasons for coming to that conclusion. Most spacefaring societies do, Omega answered. Getting back on track, we're also going to share the intel we've been able to gather on the Omni Union with you, Reynolds said. Holographic screens popped up from the table in front of all of us. The screens showed what the United Systems had thus far found out about the Omni Union, including information on the mobile prime platforms. The 4 alien diplomats studied the information carefully, eyes widening as they read. You expect us to fight against planets? Eni asked incredulously. No, Reynolds answered. We will handle the mobile prime platforms. However, we are going to need assistance against the massive number of standard vessels that they employ. That will be your task during the offensive, along with our other allies, of course. I can't help but notice that these primes are artificial intelligences like yourself, Omega, Grint pointed out. No, not like myself, Omega said curtly. There are several differences. I am far more advanced than they are. I'm able to move from computer system to computer system, whereas they are slave to their hardware. And I am not xenocidal. At least they're not asking how you're different from a 6, I chimed in. Wait, do your people also differentiate artificial intelligence and virtual intelligence? Lorik asked. Of course, I replied. Regardless, our claws are trapped, Tor interrupted. If this information is true, we don't have any hope of victory against the Omni Union. Even if it's untrue, what we've seen so far tells us we'll be doomed without help. I am not opposed to the defensive pact. Neither am I suppose, Grint said, rubbing his hands together almost nervously. What sort of force is this 8th fleet that you'll be sending? 2.5 million frigates, 3 million destroyers, 150,000 battleships, and 50,000 carriers for a total of 5 million ships, Reynolds answered. Once again, shock settled over the alien ambassadors. It should be more than enough to defend your system while the United Systems prepare for the offensive, I added. And what is the Republic's role in all of this? Lorik turned to ask me. We'll be fighting alongside you during the offensive. Our ships are not as technologically advanced as the United Systems ships are, but they are equivalent to the Omni Unions, and we have a lot of them. Lorik rubbed her neck for a moment. Fine. I am not opposed to the defensive pact. Everyone looked at Eni as she rose from her seat. She looked around at each person in the room until her eyes finally rested on Captain Reynolds. The Till Collective hereby accepts the terms of your defensive pact, she announced. Excellent. Please sign the document on your screens, Reynolds said as the screens changed. You may stay aboard the Thanatos if you wish. Tim will happily give you a tour and show you to your quarters if you do. If you'll excuse me, I have other duties to attend to. He rose from his chair and looked at me silently, asking if I was going to join him. I slightly shook my head, indicating that I wished to remain, and he left the room with a knowing smile. Thank you, Omega said as the ambassadors finished signing their screens. I've notified High Fighter Gun, and 8th Fleet will arrive shortly. Excellent. I see the Republic ambassador has remained behind, Eni said as she turned to look at me. He must wish to speak to us. I nodded. Understood. Request Tim's presence when you're finished, Omega said and promptly disappeared. Yelena, wasn't it? Lorik asked. Yes, I answered. You said the Republic will be fighting alongside us during the offensive. If that's the case, why are you here? Part of the agreement between the United Systems and the Republic is that any first contacts with species that are capable of withstanding the Omni Union feature both a US and Republic ambassador, I replied. In case we want to join one or the other. Grint chuckled. That's part of it. The other part is that we don't fully trust one another yet, I explained. What do you mean? Eni asked. Standard paranoia, mostly. We just met, I explained. Our histories, cultures, and even governments differ as well. I actually wanted to ask about you, if you don't mind. Go ahead. How many systems does the Till Collective control? Just the one, Grint answered. You all evolved in the same system? I asked incredulously. Yes. The Marl, Pexa, and Zandi evolved together on planet YRY, Eni replied. The Inarinka evolved on planet Inarinka. Our peoples met when the Inarinka took to the stars for the first time. Oh, I said. Is that why the Inarinka control the system? No, Lorik laughed. We take turns with which species is in charge. Right now it's the Enera. Next up is the Marl. Each species democratically elects their leaders as well. I kind of want to hear your sales pitch for joining the Republic, Yelena, Grint interrupted. I don't have one, I chuckled. Both the United Systems and the Republic would be thrilled to call you members, but my recommendation is going to be to research both galactic governments and decide what's best for your people. I'm sure my US counterpart would do the same. Interesting, Tor said. I don't know about you three, but I want to see this ship. Do you mind if we take the tour? Not at all. There will be plenty of time for discussion later. Tim. I called. Hello, shiphead Yelena, Tim said cheerily. Time for the tour. The four ambassadors first looked to the center of the table and then around the rest of the room. It took me a moment to realize they were searching for Tim's avatar. Tim doesn't use avatars, I explained. I sure don't. I think they're kind of creepy, pretending to be something I'm not. No thanks, Tim said. Please exit the room and follow the floor lights to begin the tour. We all stood, exited the room, and I watched as the ambassadors followed Tim's lights. Once they turned the corner, I let out all the air I'd been holding in with a huge sigh. I let my posture slouch slightly and relaxed for the first time since they came aboard.